If you grew up in the 1950s, getting your first real job wasn't just about earning money. It was about becoming an adult, proving yourself, stepping into the world your parents had built, and finding your place in it. For most people, that first job came right after high school, maybe after college if you went. But either way, it came young, 18, 19, 20 at most. You didn't take gap years. You didn't backpack through Europe finding yourself. You graduated and you went to work. The job search started simply. You didn't send resumes to hundreds of companies online. You didn't scroll through job boards or optimize your LinkedIn profile. You looked in the newspaper, the classifieds, pages and pages of tiny print listing jobs available. Help wanted, sorted by category. Clerk wanted, must type. Apply in person. Factory worker needed. Good pay. Apply Monday, Friday, 8 to 5. Secretary position available. Experience preferred. Call for appointment. You'd circle the ones that seemed right, that matched your skills, that paid enough to live on. Then you'd go apply. In person, you'd put on your best clothes, a suit for men, a nice dress for women, and you'd walk into the office or factory or store. I'm here about the job. Sometimes there'd be an application to fill out, right there, standing at a counter or sitting in a waiting room. Name, address, phone number, education, references. References were crucial. People who could vouch for you. Your high school principal, a teacher, your pastor, a neighbor who was respected in the community. You'd list them without asking permission first, because everyone understood. References were how you proved you were trustworthy, responsible, worth hiring. Sometimes you'd interview right then. The manager would come out, look you over, ask a few questions. Do you have experience? Can you start Monday? Are you willing to work hard? The interview wasn't elaborate. No behavioral questions, no multi-round processes, just a conversation. An assessment of whether you seemed reliable, whether you'd show up, whether you'd do the work. For young men, the options were broader. You could work in a factory, an office, a store, construction, delivery, sales, skilled trades if you had training. The draft loomed over everything. You had to register at 18, and the military might call. Korea had just ended, but the Cold War was hot. You could be drafted at any time, so some jobs were temporary, placeholders until your number came up, until you had to serve, or until you figured out your real career. For young women, the options were narrower. Secretary, typist, receptionist, teacher if you had college, nurse if you had training, sales clerk, telephone operator, waitress. These were acceptable jobs for women, respectable, nothing that required physical labor, nothing that put you in positions of authority over men, and they were always temporary. At least, that was the assumption. You'd work until you got married, until you had children, then you'd quit, stay home, raise your family. What was your first real job? What year did you start? What did you do? How much did you make? Share your first job story in the comments. We want to hear how you started your working life. Let's say you got the job. The manager shook your hand. You start Monday, 8 o'clock. Don't be late. Monday morning, you'd arrive early, nervous, excited, wearing your work clothes. For men, probably the same suit you wore to the interview. For women, a dress or skirt and blouse. Nothing too flashy, conservative, professional. You'd be shown around, introduced to co-workers, shown your desk or your station or your work area. The training was minimal. Someone would show you what to do. Once, maybe twice. Then you were expected to figure it out. Watch me. Now you try. Good. Any questions? No. Okay, get started. You learned on the job. By doing, by making mistakes and being corrected. By watching others and copying what they did. If you worked in an office, you'd be at a desk, a typewriter in front of you, carbon paper for copies, a filing system to learn. You'd type letters, file papers, answer phones. Good morning, Henderson Manufacturing. How may I direct your call? The office was formal, hierarchical. The boss always a man in the corner office. His secretary always a woman at the desk outside guarding access. Middle managers in their offices. Junior employees at desks in the main room. Everyone knowing their place. You called people by title and last name. Mr. Henderson, Mrs. Patterson. Never first names unless you were peers and friends. Respect was shown through formality. Lunch was at noon. Exactly noon. For exactly 1 hour. You'd eat in the break room, or at your desk, or walk to a diner nearby. You'd bring your lunch. a sandwich, an apple, cookies, in a brown paper bag or a lunchbox. Buying lunch every day was expensive. The men might go out more often, to the diner, talking business, building relationships. Women usually brought their lunch, ate together in the break room, talked about weekend plans and families. Coffee breaks happened mid-morning and mid-afternoon, 15 minutes, everyone gathering around the coffee pot, smoking, talking, then back to work. If you worked in a factory, the rhythm was different. Punching a time clock, literally, your time card in a slot. You'd pull it out, slide it into the clock, pull the lever, ka-chunk, your time stamped on the card. Late meant docked pay. Too many times late meant fired. The clock didn't lie. The clock didn't make exceptions. The work was physical, repetitive, operating machinery, assembly line, making the same motion thousands of times a day. It was loud, machines running, conveyor belts moving, people shouting to be heard over the noise. Breaks were scheduled. A whistle would blow. Everyone would stop, eat, rest, smoke, then back to work. The factory was male-dominated. Men on the floor doing the heavy work, women in lighter assembly jobs, smaller parts, delicate work, or in the office doing clerical work. The pay was hourly. You worked 40 hours, you got 40 hours of pay. You worked overtime, you got time and a half. Simple. If you worked in retail, you were on your feet all day, behind a counter, on the floor, helping customers. May I help you find something? That's a lovely choice. Will this be cash or charge? You learned to smile, even when you were tired, even when customers were rude. The customer was always right. That was the rule. You learned to make change, quickly, in your head, before calculators, before cash registers did the math for you. You learned to wrap packages, brown paper, string, tied with a bow, making it look nice, professional. You wore a uniform or very specific clothing. Dress code was strict, hair neat, makeup appropriate, nails clean. Appearance mattered. The pay was different. Some jobs were salary, a set amount per week or month. Most were hourly, and retail often paid commission on top of hourly. Incentive to sell more. Payday was weekly. Sometimes every 2 weeks you'd get a paycheck, an actual check, or sometimes cash in an envelope. You'd cash it at the bank, or at the store if they offered check cashing. Take out what you needed for the week, save the rest, or give it to your parents if you still lived at home, because many young people did still live at home, until they got married, paying rent to their parents, contributing to household expenses, saving for their future. The pay was modest. A secretary might make $40 to $50 a week. A factory worker maybe $50 to $75. An entry-level salesman maybe $60 minus $80. It doesn't sound like much, and it wasn't, but things cost less too. Rent for an apartment might be $50 to $75 a month. A new car $1,800. A loaf of bread 18 cents. You could live on it, not lavishly, but you could survive, pay your bills, have a little left over. Work culture was different. You showed up on time. You worked hard. You didn't complain. You didn't job hop. Loyalty mattered. You stayed at a company for years, decades, your whole career, moving up gradually, earning raises, building seniority. Quitting was serious. You gave 2 weeks' notice. You worked those 2 weeks. You left on good terms, because your reputation mattered. References mattered. Being fired was shameful, a mark against you, something you tried to avoid at all costs. There were no personal calls at work, no chatting on the phone with friends. The phone was for business. If your family needed to reach you in an emergency, they'd call the office. The receptionist would find you, and everyone would know something was wrong. There were no personal computers, no email, no texting, no internet. Communication was face-to-face, or phone calls, or memos typed and distributed. There was a clear separation between work and home. When you left work, you left work. No one called you at home. No one expected you to be available. You punched out, you were done. Evenings and weekends were yours. If this brought back memories of time clocks, typewriters, and your first real paycheck, subscribe to Yesterday Lives. We're preserving the work ethic, the values, and the way people built careers, one first job at a time. The workplace had rules, unspoken but understood. Men didn't do women's work, typing, filing, taking phone messages. That was beneath them. Women didn't aspire to management. That wasn't their place. They supported, they assisted, They enabled the men to do the important work. Was it fair? No, but it was how things were. Harassment happened, inappropriate comments, unwanted attention, and women endured it, because complaining meant causing trouble, being difficult, risking your job. Discrimination was legal. Companies could refuse to hire you because of your race, your religion, your gender, and they did. But you found work anyway. You persevered. You proved yourself. You worked twice as hard for half the recognition. Your first job taught you things: discipline, responsibility, how to show up even when you didn't want to, how to work with difficult people, how to take direction, how to solve problems. It taught you the value of $1, because you earned every cent. You felt the weight of a full day's work, the satisfaction of a paycheck earned through effort. It taught you about the adult world, how it worked, where you fit, what was expected, and it started you on a path. Maybe a path you'd follow for 40 years, maybe just the first step in a long journey, but a beginning nonetheless. So if you started your first job in the 1950s, you remember walking in that first day, nervous, eager, ready to prove yourself. You remember the desk, the machine, the counter, your place in the world of work. You remember your first paycheck, the amount smaller than you'd hoped, but yours earned. You remember the satisfaction of working, of contributing, of being an adult, because yesterday never truly disappeared. It just punched the time clock and got to work. And if you close your eyes, you can still hear it. The typewriter keys, the factory whistle, the cash register, the sounds of honest work. And for just a moment, you're there again, young, starting out, building a life, one day's work at a time.